Hello, hola, ni hao, salud, namaste everyone, wherever in the world you're listening to this, and welcome to 100 Some Game, a podcast where we discuss negotiation, persuasion, and influence. Join me as I interview master negotiators from a new industry each episode and get inspired to get the best outcome for yourself while creating value for your counterpart. My name is Adele. I'm a recent economics and psychology grad with experience in finance and marketing, and I'm fascinated by the power of negotiation to change your life and career. Whether you're an early or seasoned professional looking to accelerate your career, negotiate your value, and tactfully handle conflicts, or simply a curious individual aiming to level up your soft skills, leave your shoes and missed opportunities at the door, and let's get started. Welcome to a highly anticipated episode from 100 Some Game, the real estate game. Joining me today is Anya Ettinger, a Toronto Realtor and certified negotiation expert featured by BlogTO, Narcity, Daily Hive, and more. You may also have caught her on Instagram or TikTok, especially if you're a Toronto resident, where she shares tips on the Toronto real estate market and reviews some crazy listings. I've been a consumer of her content, so I'm super stoked to have her on my podcast. Anya, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start by getting to know more about you.
Oh, lots to know, I guess. I have been in real estate as a realtor for about 4 years now. Previously, I had worked in different areas within the real estate industry for, I guess we're coming on to 7 years now. I was a legal assistant for a real estate lawyer for a little bit, and I did marketing for a real estate company. So I was kind of looking inwards at a lot of the different aspects of real estate before I actually got into the industry.
As a real estate agent, curious what your negotiation style is and how did you refine it over the years?
My negotiation style is quite adaptive. I like to think of myself as a chameleon, and I will often adapt how I communicate and how I negotiate to the situation I'm in and the person that I'm on the opposite side of the table from. I generally try to be collaborative, and ultimately, you can't really come to a deal if nobody feels that they're winning. So finding a way to make someone feel as though they are winning while you win as well, having conflicting interests. For example, I'm working with a buyer. My buyer's best interest is to get the lowest possible price, whereas the seller's is to get the highest possible price. So you really need to find a way to work with the agent on the other side to find a middle point that will work for both parties. And sometimes you run into situations where the other side doesn't know what they're doing. And at that point, you kind of have to shift how you're negotiating to almost guide them in the right direction because they don't know what direction to go in.
I love that. So let's get a little bit into the tricks of your trade. First, I want to ask you, this question might be obvious, but it was asked a lot actually. How does negotiation interactions look like in real estate and how do they work?
For sure. So at a macro level, you have someone who's representing a buyer and you have someone who's representing a seller. And you, as the buyer representative, need to understand what it is that your buyer is looking to achieve, and same for the seller side. And then those two agents will come together and essentially, whether it's through verbal communication or sending paperwork back and forth, you kind of ping pong back and forth until you reach a middle ground where all parties agree. If you were to dive down more, there's a lot of communication that goes on between the buyer's and the seller's agent that is not on paper, where rather than just sending in a price and then crossing it off and countering with a new price and then crossing it off and playing that game all night, it's a lot more productive to just have a conversation as two people who are trying to do the best for their clients and see if we can try to find a middle ground that will make both sides happy.
One thing that was discussed in earlier episodes with salary negotiations is to come with facts and to know the market rates, to know the industry, to know what the average range is. Is that the approach that you take in real estate negotiations, understanding the market, understanding the average price for like this square foot of house, this many bathrooms? So you also come with facts to the table?
Yes and no. So realistically, if someone has a listing, they know what they're working with. They know the comparable sales that they're working with and that they're working against. So I, as a buyer's agent, for example, will prepare a list of comparable sales and an analysis that I would provide to my client. And from there, we would decide where we want to start on price and where we want to cap our price. Now, generally, when you move into the negotiation, there's an understanding that the seller's agent also knows this and also has this information.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't always send the comparable sales with your offer, but there are cases where you're dealing with a seller who's completely out of touch and the price is like extremely high and not anywhere close to market value, where sometimes you do include the comparable sales. And I've even dealt with deals on the buyer side where the listing agent has said, please send the comparable sales to us so that we can show our seller that you know that these exist. So there are cases where you would provide them and cases where you wouldn't, but you always, always, always need to have them for yourself and for your client.
Good to know. Are the same sort of procedures or the same sort of interactions happen for rental interactions, like rental sales?
Not to the same degree. There's a lot less negotiating about price with rentals and a lot more selling your clients as tenants, because there are a lot of landlords that are extremely weary of tenants and wanting to get the best tenant. So if you're representing the tenant in this market, you're most likely giving them the asking price.
It's the landlord's market, I assume.
Yeah, definitely right now.
Mm-hmm. Before we move on to sort of your tactics, the last question I have is, are real estate commissions negotiable?
Yep, 100%. There is no set fee for commissions in Ontario. There is no standard commission. There is no fixed rate commission. Now, a lot of agents have set their own fees to what we commonly see within the province, which is 5% total, 2.5% to both sides for buying and selling. That's kind of what we see most frequently. I should note that on the buying side, you don't know what the listing agent is receiving commission-wise. So if the listing agent has cut their commission, nobody outside of the listing agent and the seller would be aware of that and their brokerage. But it is 100% negotiable. If you are a buyer, are welcomed to ask your realtor or prospective realtor what their rate is. And in Ontario, 99% of the time, the full rate that a buyer's agent would be paying is covered by the seller. The negotiating there is a little bit different because if you wanted to change the commission rate, then you would be discussing a rebate on the commission, versus if you're a seller, you would be negotiating what it is that the realtor will be charging you on the listing side. And you can base that off of the services that they're going to offer, what is it's included in that fee. And then from there, if you feel that you're not comfortable paying that fee, that whatever it is that their price is, then you can interview other agents and get an idea of what other people are offering and go from there.
Take note, realtors. That's really good information.
And you know what? Like, a huge part of the negotiation as a realtor is proving yourself and proving why you are worth the amount of money that you make, and quantify your value to them.
Negotiating your value is critical in all industries, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's the same. If you're hiring a marketing firm or you're hiring a consultant, you want to understand why they're worth whatever amount that they charge.
Exactly. What do they bring to the table?
Yeah.
Okay. So the question I want to ask you right now is, so in this podcast, we chat a lot about creating value for the other party versus taking something away from them, as the name implies. Although in real estate negotiation, there is this common belief that parties are often seen as battling against each other rather than collaborating. How do you turn that around to create win-win situations?
I think being friendly and understanding how it is that you communicate with the other side is extremely important. If I come off as cagey right off the bat and closed and not willing to communicate and not willing to have a conversation, then there's never going to be any collaboration. So it is a two-way street, but I will never walk into a negotiation unwilling to work with the other side. You always start being willing to work together, because ultimately the common goal is get the property sold. You know, if I'm the listing agent, I want to sell it to these people. If I'm the buying agent, I want my clients to get this property that they love. Both sides have a common goal.
pull the other party to see that we're actually at the same side of the table.
Yeah, exactly. Making sure that they understand that. And, there are so many people that are new to real estate, but there are also agents that just don't have a lot of experience and only do 1 or 2 deals a year, if that, and they don't understand how to walk into a negotiation. So you need to be able to take control of the situation. And if you're dealing with someone that doesn't understand how to negotiate and doesn't understand how to collaborate, you need to kind of gently guide them in the right direction and show by example.
Yeah, that's amazing. And when we talk about pricing, people often wonder, okay, how long should I wait in order to put a counter offer? Who should name a number first?
Mm-hmm.
What are some of these tricks, right? You should wait X amount of time. You should use this structure when you're putting a number out there.
It depends on the type of situation you are in. So if you are in a multiple offer situation, for example, you are essentially countering against yourself as a buyer because the seller can't counter any offer without binding themselves to it. So if a seller counters an offer, but they have 5 offers, then they now can no longer accept any of the other 4. So when you're dealing with situations like that, there will be some degree of communication between you as the buying agent and the listing agent to try and understand, okay, I need to increase my price, but by how much? I mean, now with the seller's direction, they can disclose, but previously they could not disclose any of the contents of the offer. As a buying agent, there's a lot of, you need to really try to drag information out of the listing agent so that you can best serve your buyer and help them come back with a number that will hopefully get them the property. Whereas if you're dealing with a situation that I guess we could call typical, where you as a buyer submit an offer to the seller and you are the only offer, I mean, the hope is that it doesn't drag out. Sometimes if you come in with an offer that is so obscenely low, the sellers will need a little bit of time to think about it and discuss. Sometimes listing agents will give a minimum irrevocable time, which is essentially they're asking for a minimum of, say, 5 hours or 12 hours to review the offer before it expires. You don't want to send anything too quickly because then that goes to show that there wasn't much thought put into it. You and your clients weren't really thinking about it. Example, I had a listing and 2 weeks ago we received an offer that was a couple $100,000 below asking. And we took maybe an hour and a half, countered the offer. I called the agent. I gave them a heads up of what we were coming back with. And he said, okay, I'll talk to my clients and discuss. I did not receive a single phone call. I received nothing from the agent. Within 15 minutes, they sent me another counter offer, which was still very, very low. But that went to show that there was very little thought that went into that counter. They were not thinking about how we can get the deal done and how we can bridge the gap. They said, okay, we're just going to put this number. They had pre-decided essentially where they were going to come back.
I love that this thing plays out of okay, how much time did you take to respond? And that actually communicates something about you.
Yeah.
And how you negotiate basically, and whether that's going to build a bad reputation or a good reputation for you. So since we spoke a little bit about competition, multiple offers being at the table, what do you think are some best practices when there are multiple offers at the table and you're a buyer, for example?
Always befriend the listing agent. Mm-hmm. It is so important to establish a clear line of communication between yourself and the listing agent, because you want to be the first person that they call. You want to be the person that they're going to communicate with. Sometimes as a listing agent, you get several offers and 60% of the offers never called you, never spoke to you. So you don't know how willing they are to negotiate. You don't know where they're at. And sometimes sellers are emotionally attached to their homes. Maybe it's a family home that they raised their kids in. So establishing a line of communication with the listing agent and understanding what is it that motivates the seller and what is it that they will want to see most in the offer. And there are cases where they say, my seller is really attached to the home and they want to know about the clients. So you have your buyers write a letter that talks about them and their family and
love it,
stuff like that. But not every seller appreciates that. So you need to have a discussion days before you offer to try and understand what it is that you can do that will increase your chance as much as possible outside of price.
I love it. We spoke about this in other episodes as well, the importance of building relationships before coming on to the negotiation table.
Mm-hmm.
As much relationship as you can build, as much as you can learn from them. Do learn it, do your research, befriend the other people at the table that may or may not be the decision makers, but they have an influence on the decision makers.
And not only that, but there's always a risk when you are dealing with multiple offers that something might happen. And if you're dealing with a buyer agent who you know and who's built rapport with you and who has a reputation, then you as the listing agent will feel a lot more comfortable going with that offer because you know that this is a professional who has done their due diligence with their clients and who knows that they will do everything possible to make sure the transaction proceeds. Whereas there are other cases that you accept an offer and the buyer never shows up with a check and you never get the deposit. And then you're kind of stuck and you've accepted one offer out of 5. And now you have to go back to the 4 others and say, hey, it didn't go through and you're going to end up getting less money. So there is something to having that rapport.
100%. That was a really good example. I love that. And that was something that I did not consider before. So even I'm taking notes now. Let's deep dive into some psychology and EQ. I want to know how you use your body language and tone of voice in real estate negotiations. If people don't really have a lot of control on their body language and they want to improve those skills, how can they do that and how do you do that?
With real estate, when you're dealing with another agent, typically it's all over the phone. So they don't actually see your body language. So it's a lot more difficult to communicate in that sense because such a large part of communication is body language. What I said earlier about being adaptable, that's kind of how I would say I communicate. There are some agents that I feel will best respond to a more assertive tone. Sometimes you need to be really friendly. You kind of pick up on how they're communicating and you try to match or pick a style that will complement how they communicate. But when you're dealing with clients in person, kind of having just a calm and collected body language makes a big difference because people are usually really stressed if they're buying or selling. There's a lot that goes into it. There are huge emotional stakes. There's a huge financial interest. So you being grounded makes a big difference because then they can feed off of your energy.
Yeah. There are some clients that are definitely stressed, but some of them are more stressed than others. Some of them are calmer than others. Some of them may have less of a financial interest if they already have a good amount of wealth and income. How can you read those bodily cues, or what are some bodily cues that tell you this person is more stressed than average? This person is calmer than average.
So I actually start every first interaction with a new client or prospective client by asking how it is that they prefer to communicate. Do you need someone that will hold your hand? Do you want someone that's hands off? I have clients who are very impulsive and they need someone to kind of drag them back and make sure that they take an extra beat to think about what it is that they're doing. Or other clients that are more prone to dragging their feet and they want someone who will help kind of whip them into shape and get them focused and ready to hit the road. People really appreciate being asked because everyone has a different way that they want to be spoken to. Some people prefer positive reinforcement. Some people prefer negative reinforcement. How is it that I can help you best achieve your goal? And that's, I think, what's the most important. And from that, upon interactions, you can kind of see if people are more closed off and maybe more shy, or if they're a lot more chatty. You can kind of pick up on that as you go through and try to pick up little things that they say about how they communicate, or even just their lifestyle that will kind of help you form a full picture of what it is that might make this person tick and how it is that you can best help them.
Love it. We always come back to one general theme, which is understanding your client or the agent. And understanding comes from building rapport, building that friendship, understanding that person almost 360.
For sure.
And once you have that set, then you can apply these tips and tricks to support in negotiating or in helping them.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of realtors are lacking, because there are a lot of realtors that do not take the time to build rapport with their clients or build rapport with other agents, and also don't take the time to try to understand how it is that they can best help their client. And that inversely goes to show why there is so much hatred towards the real estate community and the industry, because outside of the fact that affordability is out of control, there are so many agents that don't care, and they really do only care about their bottom line, and they set the reputation for everybody else. So if everyone takes an approach of, this is my client, I'm here to help them, and I'm here to serve them, then perhaps the perception of the industry can change. But I mean, you'd have to get a lot of people on board that probably won't be on board.
Yeah. I love it though. I love this little message that you put out there. I think it's really important that this perception changes in the industry as well.
Yeah, I'd love to see a shift in how people do their jobs.
Right. Of course, since I have you here, I want to ask you about the Toronto real estate market. I know so many of my listeners are from the GTA. So tell us about what is the current situation of the market and where do you expect it to be next?
One term that I've seen a lot over the last couple of weeks that I think is the perfect way to describe the market is in hibernation. Seasonally, there is often a big slowdown in December because people are going on holidays and they don't want to be making a huge purchase just before they spend a lot of money for the holidays. But it also is cold and people kind of slow down, and this is when they start taking their breaks and relaxing. So people generally tend to list less, so there's less inventory, but there are also fewer buyers. Not a lot happens in December and even early into January. Outside of the interest rate climate and the economy, that's just a general thing that we will often see at this time of year. Now, add into the mix the fact that rates have increased substantially over the last few years. It makes it a lot harder for buyers and a lot less motivating for buyers to get out there. Now, the third thing that kind of ties into all of that is there's a lot of inventory and things aren't moving quickly, so buyers are using up their luxury of time that they did not have during the pandemic.
Right.
So people are slower to make decisions because they have the ability to take more time. On top of that, they're less motivated because of the time of year, and they're less motivated because of the interest rate climate. It just kind of brings it to a slowdown. We're not seeing a huge drop in prices right now. Typically, December will see a bit of a dip from the previous month because of the lack of movement. I can't imagine that things will be too crazy in the new year right away. I think if they start cutting rates, or perhaps as we enter into spring when things get busier, we might see a change, but I can't imagine January and early February being too crazy.
Mm-hmm. All right. This was amazing. So before we end this episode, Anya, give us one tip for tenants, one for landlords, one for buyers, one for sellers.
One tip for tenants: if you are thinking of moving, do not start looking 60 days before you want to move out. There's not going to be anything on the market. You're going to have very limited options. So I'd say the best time to start looking is 30 to 45 days before your anticipated move-in date.
Good tip.
For landlords, do heavy due diligence with tenants. Make sure you're not looking at fraudulent documents. Scour the internet. I mean, if you are using a realtor, that's what they should be doing. They should be looking at all of that. But as a listing agent on rentals, have received fraudulent documents before. So just be on the lookout and make sure that you are doing all of the due diligence.
Yep.
For buyers, now that you have the luxury of time, don't abuse it, but take it. Don't make rash decisions that you'll regret. Go back, see the property again, and make sure that the agent you are using is providing you with the comparables for that property and is helping guide you to a price that you are comfortable with. Don't let anyone push you around and try to push you to spend more.
Right.
Have them show you what it is that the property is worth based on the comparable sales, give you a range, and then from there, you should be the one making the decision on what the price will be. For sellers, be in tune with what is happening in the market, especially for the type of property that you have, whether it's a condo or a house and the location. The market in Toronto is very micro-focused right now. One neighborhood behaves differently from another neighborhood. Townhouses, houses, condos all move differently. So you need to be in tune with what's happening with the market, because you never want to be chasing the market down. If the market is moving down and you are overpriced, you are chasing it down. You need to get below it. I guess be realistic would be the quick tip.
Yeah. Amazing, amazing episode.
Thank you so much for having me.
So glad that we did this together. Thank you, Anya, for coming on my podcast and sharing all your incredible insights. You're a great realtor, a certified negotiation expert, content creator, everything, and you show your value.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. I hope you took as much valuable information as I did and more. My name is Adele, and you have listened to an episode from 100 Some Game. You like it here? Go ahead and subscribe to 100 Some Game on your preferred platform. While you're at it, I'd love to hear about what you're thinking of this podcast, any episode requests, or further feedback. It'll help me make this podcast better for you. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Peace.